My wife cheated on me and I saw it on my Apple TV. Story 1. Me, 34 male, with my wife, 32 female, of 5 years. I know she's cheating on me, I can't bring myself to confront her. I, 34 years old, met my wife, 32 years old, at a party 7 years ago. She was the out-of-your-league girl that no one was interested in, and I was the uncomfortable guy in the corner trying not to look. She was eventually introduced to me by the host, we connected over a common love of darts, went on a few hundred platonic trips together, and a year later we landed up in her bed and in a relationship. She proposed to me a year later. In our relationship, she has the most power. I'm a chocolatier, and she's a vice president at a bigger firm. She works long days and even longer nights, while I cook and clean and work 5 days a week at a little artisanal store downtown. We live in a high-end neighborhood, so I make a solid living, but she earns more than twice as much as I do. So she buys things for the home, such as a new set-top box for the television. The set-top box has a screensaver feature that cycles images from your Apple photo collection. Last week, she was still at work, and when I got home from work, the TV, which I'd used to view a YouTube video that morning and had absolutely switched off, was on screensaver. It had images on it that had to have come from her phone, pictures of her in our living room, one of our female friends, and a man I'd never seen in pretty intimate postures. Because the photographs traveled about the room, I believe there was a fourth person shooting shots with her phone, but I didn't see her. What was odd was that she was wearing a bandage on her hand, which she'd done the day before after complaining of RSI. I was astonished that I had left the TV on, but I decided to keep the screensaver on and see what she had to say when she got home later that evening. When she got home, the visuals seemed to vanish, and they haven't been on the TV since. Because the TV was on, I asked her if she'd been home during the day, and she claimed she'd returned home over lunch to pick up a USB stick she'd left in her computer at home. I attempted to question her about the photos but couldn't bring myself to do it. Now I must add something I don't have a lot of experience with. I am an introvert who had few connections before to her. Our life, on the other hand, is pretty vanilla, even by my standards. I've never had oral before, and I've only had it twice since we met. Suggesting it to her generally resulted in a lecture about not doing such things, and for the night was out of the question. In those photos, she did everything she never wanted to do with me. I've attempted to approach her many times since that day. She's been staying out longer recently, not just since last week, but for the previous 4 months or so, and she's often too exhausted for anything romantic, even simply hugging. And when she gets home, she frequently vanishes in her office and comes to bed long after I've fallen asleep. But even when we spend time together, like we did this weekend, I can't bring myself to face her. I'm concerned about what I could hear and how it will affect our relationship. I still adore her and can't picture my life without her. How can I get the confidence to do so? Is there a way to get out of this? So, there's a lot to say. But first, a few words of caution. I had no idea what a red pill was until I wrote this. I now do. I sort of wish I didn't, but a few hundred mails forced me to. You know those debt solution letters you receive when you owe money to the county? Those items came in quick and furious like that. Others concluded that since my throwaway had the word read, I was a sock puppet for them. I'm not. I don't believe they have a solution that isn't worse than the issue it purports to solve. So, what exactly happened? I went for a stroll that evening, she wasn't home, and rang about for attorneys. It was quite late, and I had a lot of voicemails, but only one was answered. She requested me to gather my bank accounts and a slew of other documents and meet with her the following morning. That evening, I resolved to face my wife. That did not occur. She arrived home late and almost immediately went to take a bath. I crept into her office and removed her phone from her handbag. It had a fingerprint scanner, but her PIN was the same as the one she used for the garage and our safe, which she had set up, so it was simple. I couldn't locate anything on the phone, and the photos in Apple Photos and Google Photos were all from activities we'd done together, as well as some for her profession. There are no messages or anything like that. Her purse buzzed just as I was about to put the phone back in. She has a second phone. I couldn't log in since it was an Android and had a pattern. But there was a message on the screen with simply a phone number and no name with a 3 on it. Replace that. I decided to postpone the confrontation until after the lawyer, but I did photograph the message. The following morning, I spoke with the lawyer, who spent about a half hour simply going through probable results and what to anticipate next, followed by another 45 minutes discussing money and so on. We don't have children, and she's the breadwinner, so I'm either out of the relationship or out and due money. It will take months, if not more than a year, to resolve all of this. It seems that it takes 5 minutes to marry and a year to unmarry. I'd gone by my workplace and informed the employer that I was unwell. I look like trash since I haven't slept and have been weeping a lot, so it was fairly convincing. We work in the food industry, therefore being ill is not an option. I returned home, disconnected the Apple TV, and brought it to a buddy who owns a small computer business. He validated what you had informed me, the images on her screensaver are from her Apple Photos. He was also the first person I told, and he instantly offered me a place to stay with his wife and children if I needed to leave for long. Then he contacted the number from which the text on my wife's second phone arrived and informed me that a man named Rob had answered it. I walked home and contacted her to see if she was available for supper. She texted back stating she'd have to do some additional work and that she would be late, so I asked her to make an exception and come home with me since I had crucial news. I imagined she'd believe I'd finally found a home since we'd been searching for a long. Dinner came and went, and she didn't appear. She arrived home at 10 o'clock, smelling strongly of cigarettes. She was overjoyed and asked what I wanted to speak about, so I invited her to have a seat. I'm usually okay with making up a story about a home to avoid a conflict, but for the first time, I felt a little rage. So I informed her. I said, I'm aware you've been cheating for some time. I've been working with an attorney, and we'll have to discuss these issues at some point, so now is as awful a time as any. She didn't scream and dispute it. She just deflated and began to shiver. Many of your PMs, as well as my attorney and a friend, advised me not to ask for specifics and to avoid putting pressure on myself. But I was curious, so I said, tell me about Rob. They met via Ann, the friend on the sofa with her, and Ann wanted to have with him while he had a crush on my wife, so they devised this plot. That happened 14 months ago. They've recently added Rob's wife, the mystery fourth person who shot the photos, who is polyamorous with that Rob man. The image problem was also resolved. She'd given her phone to her wife to snap a few shots and had forgotten about the screen blanker. She'd posted and erased them from her phone while she was at work. I had seen them by coincidence at that point. She had the second phone for the same reason I did. It wasn't on our joint contract, so I couldn't see the incoming and outgoing calls in my account. She also had brief encounters with other women and a few men, and the majority of her weekend work consisted of her and Rob taking short vacations together. Throughout it all, it seemed like she was giving me as much information as she could in order to hurt me, and it succeeded, but I believe I had a very decent poker face. I informed her that I would be leaving the home, that I had photographed and cataloged everything, and that I hoped for a peaceful parting. She just rejected, saying she'd go and stay at a hotel for the time being, and leaving her keys on the table. She gathered her belongings and departed. That was the last straw. As one user/you/Fluster put it, it was like going to the dentist. It hurt less than I expected but still hurt a lot. Today, I have roughly 15 missed calls and 150 plus messages from her, all pleading for forgiveness and asking if we might make it work again. I promised to see her the next week, but simply to split our belongings. As far as I'm concerned, this is the end of the story. Except for my one buddy, no one knows yet, and I want to postpone making it public until I go through my belongings and determine what to do next. We'll see whether he truly goes to the gym, if he's looking for a new relationship, and the rest. Story 2. My wife, 32 female, a 4-year cheated on me with her coworker. I, 39 male, forgave her but I don't feel normal. My wife and I met while we were in our early 20s. She was in college and I was in graduate school. In college, I had 2 unsuccessful relationships that lasted less than a month and realized that it was not for me. My family life was chaotic and I'd never seen a happy relationship in my life. I slept a lot, drank a lot, and hung around with the wrong crew. When we initially met, I assumed it was simply a passing fling. We apparently misread one another, and she assumed we were in a serious relationship. I confessed to sleeping around and generally cheating on her in the beginning. However, she was the first person to ever actually love me, and all the phony I love yous quickly became genuine. My kid was always incredibly kind and naive, believing the best in everyone. We grew serious quickly, but it all came crashing down when she found out about my body count at the start of our relationship. When we reunited again after 6 years, we split up and got back together. We'd obviously matured and had a lot of relearning to do, but in my perspective, it just strengthened our love for one another. After 2 more years of dating, I proposed and we married around 4 years ago. We also have a 3-year-old daughter. Our marriage has been wonderful, a stark contrast to everything I'd ever seen as a child. We seldom have large disagreements. In fact, I can't recall any. We make fun of each other but don't go too far, and we simply enjoy being together on dull days doing our job. We each have an equal share of home tasks. I honestly don't see anything wrong with it. We've even discussed having another kid and fostering pets. My wife had gone to work to settle out some issues. They had to do it in person since their employer was sending people in batches to keep things safe, and one of her male co-workers was assigned to come on that day as well. Her colleague is now unmarried, and I assume he's had affections for my wife for quite some time. According to what she told me, they were simply catching up and happy to see one another in person after such a long time. They had been conversing for quite some time and were absolutely alone. When my wife leaned in to hug him farewell, he kissed her and she kissed him back. She allowed him to slip his hands beneath her blouse and grip her. Her jacket, blouse, and bra came off, but she couldn't go any farther when he attempted to take her and his trousers off. This is when she apologized and walked away. My wife came home in tears and quickly told me the incident. She started apologizing and said it wasn't anything I did, and she stated she's pleased with me and would never talk to her colleague again. She wants to change departments. I was disturbed by this, but I still held her in my arms as she sobbed into my arms. For some reason, I felt compelled to console her rather than be upset myself. When I questioned her why she did what she did, she said she was probably going insane from the lack of human interaction caused by COVID, and that it simply occurred so suddenly and out of nowhere. She informed me she had no emotions for the man and finds him unattractive. The problem is that I trust her. I'm angry with how far things went, and I think she cheated. But I'm also pleased she didn't have with him. I've mostly forgiven her, but she still behaves a little shy around me and continues to do useless things for me because she's still feeling bad. When I told a buddy about it, he thought I was an idiot for forgiving her so quickly. He said that he had previously had someone cheat on him and that my wife is most likely having an affair with a colleague or has just finished things. Long-term relationship with him and is informing me out of remorse he is certain she slept with one of her co-workers. After reading cheating advice articles, I realized that my reaction wasn't typical and that I'm definitely missing something. I don't want to be wounded, yet I adore my wife and would never leave her. I adore the family we've created, and I know I couldn't do it with anybody else. Was my reaction normal? Should I begin snooping? Story 3. What was once a beautiful love story turned into horror. Wife cheated and destroyed my life. In 2016, I relocated to another nation to marry the love of my life. I gave up everything, friends, family, and my job. I was willing to start all over again for her, and everything was flawless from the start. We began experiencing issues almost precisely a year ago. I was still unable to work or drive due to immigration procedures, and I was quite lonely. My wife became weary of me and began to hang out with a buddy who didn't like me, and I wasn't permitted to accompany her. My wife would often refuse to return home to sleep. And in the midst of it all, I discovered she was having an affair with a co-worker. Her companion was aware of it and urged her to pursue it. I informed her family that I couldn't handle it any longer and that I was leaving. My wife then attempted suicide. I intervened, she apologized, vowed to reform, and I remained. But it wouldn't be for long. She put on a brave front for a while, but I subsequently discovered that she was texting her friend and boyfriend at the same time, stating she hoped I would just go. Her family refused to talk to her after discovering she had cheated, but I persuaded them to accept her back. I discovered she was still cheating a few months later. I wanted to leave her, but I couldn't since it had been a year and I had turned down a job offer after graduating from college. I had relatives and friends, but no inheritance. I'd returned to live with my folks, so I approached her family for assistance and decided to join the military to give myself a chance to live without her. My wife, on the other hand, came home distraught and persuaded me to give her another opportunity. That's exactly what I did. I'm not proud of it, but I love her a lot. I didn't want to be without her. I persuaded her family to accept her back once again, and then I began working. I worked 2 jobs, made more money than my wife, and assumed everything would be okay. I was also accepted into 2 graduate programs, and I was so excited that I believed she'd be pleased, because she said she strayed since she didn't feel she had a spouse because I couldn't work and provide for her. But then she changed. She began to belittle my occupations, claiming that I wouldn't be able to get a job with prestige anytime soon, which disturbed her. Then one night, after working all day, I arrived home and my wife did not. She went out for the night without informing me. She had cheated again and again. And this time she was able to persuade her family that she was not cheating and that I was abusing her, a lie. As a result, everyone turned their backs on me, leaving me alone in a foreign nation. I was still living with my wife, but she seldom came home and her relatives told me that I should simply let her do it since she wasn't cheating and I was crazy. I was afraid that returning to my home country would destroy my life, so I began working harder and earning more money. But my wife wasn't satisfied with just straying. She wanted me gone, so she blackmailed me, threatening to have me deported. She came home with a strange man one night and nearly got me into a fight, so I realized I had no option but to leave. That's exactly what I did. She wouldn't let me go until I booked my trip, but at the last minute she changed her mind and urged me to remain. It was my 3rd time quitting both jobs, and I was afraid, so I left. And I returned to my own nation to find nothing. There is no work, there is no revenue. I live with my parents. My wife kept promising to mend things and move in with me. I told her I'd give her a chance and began making plans to have her here. She abruptly gave up and asked me to return. I also said okay, but had to reschedule all of my plans. Finally, after I had done all I could to go back, she informed me she wanted a divorce when it was her chance to act. She accused me of abandoning her, despite the fact that I made every effort to remain. She said I was possessive because I didn't want her to hang out with the man with whom she cheated on me and his buddies. And I discovered significant proof that she is still cheating on her previous lover, a man she accused of abusing her and raping her. Now, here's my predicament. I'm stranded in my home nation during an economic downturn. I have a decent degree, but I haven't studied in 2 years since I had to leave everything to marry. I have a green card, but it belongs to my wife, and I'm not sure I can use it. After all of this, I acquired anxiety and sadness. I'm heartbroken because I adore that lady. I used to have decent employment and had been admitted to 2 graduate programs, but now I have nothing. She ruined my life. I didn't do anything wrong, and yet I'm the one who has to pay for everything. My wife retained our dogs, despite the fact that she hardly cares for them, and I miss them terribly. Please accept my apologies for the lengthy article. I needed to express myself. For a long time, I kept everything to myself in the hopes that she would change. But I'm at a breaking point. I originally submitted this on another subreddit, but was told to publish it here instead.